will for your life. That submission to that rule. Jesus' words here are finally at the end of this, follow me. A present imperative. While we've had these two aorist or past imperatives, this is a present imperative that's the idea of to keep on following me. To follow and keep on following me. Say no to self, saying yes to God continually, being willing to submit to God's plan for our lives. Verse 35, for whosoever will save his life shall lose it, but whosoever shall lose his life for my sake and for the gospel's, the same shall save it. This is one of those multiple times that we're going to see what seems like impossibilities. They're things that just don't work in the gospel, but they do work. I will admit that in so many cases, my human understanding, and this is part of the problem that I sometimes think people get into with theology, is that we let our human brains try to dictate what's right and what's logical. And I think sometimes we go down paths theologically we ought not go down because it's logical, but it's not biblical. And so we get stuck doing that which is wrong because we did that which makes sense to us, but it isn't what the Bible actually says. And there's several of those cases. You might call it a paradox or what seems like a paradoxical statement. We're going to see verse 35, 36, and 38 all begin with this idea of for. The 38 actually begins in the Greek with this word gar, for, which helps explain back into verse 34, focusing on discipleship, leaving one's allegiance to one's own life, pledging allegiance to Jesus as a disciple. And he makes this, like I said, impossible statement, paradoxical statement, wordplay on the idea of lose and life. Life here is interesting. In the Greek, the word is suke, that is translated life. It's the word that we most commonly translate. Guys, we get our word psyche from it in English. Most of the time when we see it translated in the scriptures, it's translated as soul. So this idea, and there are several different words in Greek, bios, we get our word biology from it, suke. There are several words that we translate for life, but suke usually to the Greek refers to a natural life, the part of a life that's natural. As opposed to bios, which is biology. It also, for us, refers to the part of a person that lives on afterlife, usually. If one who decides to maintain a self-centered life is ultimately going to lose that life. Contrastingly, a person who willingly gives over his life, loses his life, his soul, in loyalty to Christ and the gospel, is going to gain that life. So in the one, if you live your life for your life, in the end of your life, you're going to have lost your life. Your soul is going to be lost. If you, however, give over your life, your natural life, your time while you're here on earth, to Christ and the gospel, in the end, you will have gained your life. So it's really kind of a word play on that concept of life going on there. Verse 36, for what shall it profit a man if he shall gain the whole world and lose his own soul? Or what shall a man give in exchange for his soul? Jesus used these rhetorical questions to show the supreme value of an eternal life. We think of life here on earth as long time. But even if we lived here 1,000 years on earth, how long is that in comparison to an eternal life? I mean, we don't have recorded in the scriptures or in history of someone who managed to live 1,000 years. Is it possible there was somebody and we just don't know about him? Sure. I mean, Methuselah lived 969. As for people else time during Methuselah's day, is it possible someone else lived longer than that? Sure, maybe. We don't know. But even if you lived 1,000 years, how long is that in relationship to eternity? It's nothing. I mean, take a number. You have any mathematicians out there? No? Take any number and divide it by infinity and you see what you get. Okay, I know. A real mathematician, my own son, would jump on me if I said that. And he would say, well, which infinity are we talking about? Yes, I know. But in the case of eternity, we can think of it in that terms. If you have an infinite amount of numbers, you take any finite number and divide it by an infinite amount of numbers, you basically get nothing. Our own lives are so small in comparison to that. So what will it profit you if you get everything in the world, all the pleasures, all the earthly possessions, anything you could possibly want, but in the end, you have it for this short period of time that's your life, and then you're eternally lost. What can a man give in exchange for his soul? The answer, of course, is nothing. A person is irrevocably lost. Verse 38, whosoever therefore shall be ashamed of me and of my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, of him also shall the Son of Man be ashamed when he cometh in the glory of his Father with the holy angels. This verse parallels and complements verse 35 by carrying that thought to its ultimate consequence. For, that is, whosoever, gar, a person who's ashamed of Jesus and denies Jesus and his words in this spiritually unfaithful and sinful generation. He was talking about the generation of his day, and it's important to note sometimes that he was talking to those people in his day who were a spiritually unfaithful and sinful generation. He wasn't talking to us, but don't get me wrong, we live in a spiritually unfaithful and sinful generation. The Son of Man is also going to be ashamed of him when he comes in his Father's glory with the holy angels. Jesus and the Son of Man are the same person. I read one commentary who tried to divide that. That was weird. I get exactly what he was trying to say with that whole discussion. But it's clear, me and my, elsewhere, that he uses it, of me and my words in verse 38. It's clear that we're talking about Jesus and the Son of Man being the same person, and his future role as judge was appropriate because of the crowd's presence. Being ashamed of or denying him, rejecting him, and retaining allegiance to this generation because of unbelief and fear of the world and contempt and desire for pleasure or any other reason is going to result when Jesus comes as the judge. He is not going to claim that person as their own. It just follows with that same exact concept that we've been following earlier on. He's going to refuse to claim them, and they're going to experience death, the second death, permanent death, the death of hell.